My name is Jessica Walker, 34 years old, and I never thought I would have to choose between my parents and my son. Logan, my sweet 12-year-old boy, has always been the light of my life since I became a single mom. Our monthly dinners at my parents' house used to be tradition despite my complicated relationship with them. But last month, they crossed a line that can never be uncrossed. Before I tell you how my parents destroyed their relationship with my son forever, drop a comment letting me know where you are watching from, and subscribe if family drama stories resonate with you. Growing up as the only daughter of Robert and Eleanor Mitchell was never easy. From my earliest memories, perfection was not just expected, but demanded. My father, a successful corporate attorney, applied the same ruthless standards he used in the courtroom to our home life. My mother, a former beauty queen, turned social coordinator for the country club, scrutinized everything from my posture to my vocabulary. There was no room for mistakes in the Mitchell household. "Stand up straight, Jessica. No one respects a girl who slouches," my mother would say, physically adjusting my shoulders at family gatherings when I was just 7 years old. That test score is acceptable, but acceptable is not exceptional. My father would comment on my 96% grades, somehow making what should have been a celebration feel like a failure. Their favorite tactic was what I now recognize as emotional manipulation through public humiliation. They believed that shame was the greatest motivator. If I brought home a report card with mostly A's and 1 B, they would announce it at dinner parties. "Jessica is doing well in most subjects, but apparently science is proving too challenging for her." They thought this would push me to try harder, but instead, it taught me to hide my failures and eventually hide parts of myself. By the time I left for college, I had developed severe anxiety about disappointing people. I second-guessed every decision from my major to the clothes I wore. When I met Daniel in my sophomore year, his laid-back attitude and unwavering support felt like oxygen after years of suffocation. We married right after graduation, much to my parents' disapproval. They thought he lacked ambition because he wanted to be a high school art teacher rather than pursue a real career, as they put it. The early years of our marriage were happy, especially when Logan came along. Daniel was an amazing father, creative and patient. He introduced Logan to art from the moment he could hold a crayon. My parents, however, were critical from the start. "He seems small for his age," my mother commented, when Logan was just 6 months old. "Reading him stories is fine, but you should be focusing on mathematics. That is where real intelligence is cultivated," my father said, when Logan was barely 3. When Logan was 7, Daniel and I divorced. It was amicable, the result of growing apart, rather than any dramatic betrayal, but my parents viewed it as yet another failure on my part. They suggested I move back home for the stability, but that was the last thing Logan and I needed. Instead, I focused on creating a loving, accepting home where Logan could thrive on his own terms. Logan grew into a sensitive, thoughtful boy with a passion for art like his father, and an unexpected talent for science that emerged in elementary school. He was different from the rough-and-tumble boys my parents thought he should be friends with. He preferred reading to sports painting to video games, and had a gentle way about him that made him popular with teachers, but sometimes a target for bullies. My parents never understood him. To them, he was too quiet, too sensitive, too interested in impractical pursuits. They made comments about how boys should be, and suggested sports leagues and military prep programs that would toughen him up. I deflected these suggestions, protecting Logan from their disapproval as best I could, while still maintaining the family relationship I thought was important. "They are his only grandparents," I justified to myself. "They love him in their own way." The incidents were small at first. My father questioning why Logan took dance instead of baseball. My mother sighing loudly when Logan talked about his favorite books, instead of discussing the private school they thought he should attend. I would redirect, make excuses, smooth things over. I became an expert at changing subjects and creating distractions when I sensed their criticism building. Every monthly dinner at their house became a carefully choreographed performance on my part. I would coach Logan beforehand about topics that were safe to discuss with his grandparents. I would bring up my parents' achievements and ask leading questions to keep them talking about themselves, rather than interrogating Logan. It was exhausting, but seemed necessary to maintain family peace. Then came the invitation to my cousin Allison's 40th birthday celebration. It would be a larger gathering than our usual dinners with extended family from both sides. My Aunt Barbara would be there, my mother's sister, and the only family member who had consistently shown genuine warmth toward Logan. I thought the larger crowd might actually make things easier, diffusing my parents' attention and providing more allies. "Can we bring my science project?" Mom Logan asked the morning of the party. He had been working for weeks on an elaborate model of a sustainable city, complete with solar panels and water recycling systems. It had won first place in his school competition and was advancing to the district level. "I do not think there will be room in the car, honey," I said hesitantly. "But Grandpa always asks what I have been doing in school," Logan persisted. "I want to show him something cool for once." His words hit me hard. For once, even at 12, Logan sensed his grandfather's perpetual disappointment. Part of me wanted to protect him from another dismissive response, but another part hoped that this tangible achievement might finally earn my father's approval. "Okay, but let us be careful with it. You have worked so hard." Logan's face lit up, and I felt a flutter of hope that maybe this time would be different. He carefully wrapped his project in bubble wrap and placed it in a box that fit in our trunk. During the entire 45-minute drive to my parents' suburban estate, Logan rehearsed what he would say, the technical terms he had learned, and the research that had inspired his design. "Do you think Grandpa will like it?" he asked as we turned onto their street. "He should be very impressed," I said, wishing I believed it myself. As we pulled into their circular driveway, I noticed my parents standing at the front door, my mother already assessing my car and clothes with a critical eye. I took a deep breath and put on my social smile, the one I had perfected over years of family gatherings. "Ready?" I asked Logan. He nodded, clutching his project box. "Ready." We stepped out of the car into what I hoped would be just another family dinner, not knowing it would be the day everything changed. My parents' house looked perfect as always, not a flower out of place in the manicured garden, or a speck of dust on the gleaming windows. My mother had decorated the entryway with elegant birthday banners and fresh flower arrangements for Allison's celebration. The air was filled with the scent of my father's famous roast beef and my mother's cinnamon apple pies. "Jessica, darling, you are 5 minutes late," my mother said, as she air-kissed my cheeks, her pearl earrings catching the light. She was wearing a crisp linen dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. "Traffic was heavier than expected," I explained, though we both knew 5 minutes was hardly late. My father emerged from behind her martini already in hand. "Logan, you have grown at least half an inch," he said, his standard greeting that somehow always made Logan stand up straighter. "Still too skinny, though." "Do not. They feed you at school." Logan smiled politely. "Hi, Grandpa. I brought something to show you." My father glanced at the box with thinly veiled disinterest. "Later, perhaps. The game is on in the den, and your Uncle Philip is waiting to see you." I caught the flash of disappointment on Logan's face before he carefully set his project box in a corner of the foyer. "Go on in, honey," I encouraged. "I will bring this to a safer spot." As Logan headed toward the den, my mother linked her arm through mine, with a grip that was more restraint than affection. "Jessica, what is he wearing? Those jeans have a hole in the knee." "They came that way, Mom. It is the style," I explained, knowing it was futile. "And his hair. It is nearly covering his eyes. Robert mentioned a scholarship opportunity at Westfield Academy, but they have strict appearance guidelines." I extracted myself from her grip as politely as possible. "Logan is happy at his current school. He just won the science fair, actually. That is what he brought to show Dad." My mother waved her hand dismissively. "Science fairs are hardly indicators of real academic promise. Now come say hello to everyone." Allison brought her new boyfriend, and he is a neurosurgeon. The living room was filled with relatives in expensive clothing, all holding cocktail glasses and maintaining the particular volume of people who are practiced at sounding interested without being too enthusiastic. My cousin Allison, the birthday girl, waved from where she sat with her new boyfriend. My aunts and uncles from both sides of the family occupied various chairs and sofas, while my cousin's children played quietly with electronic devices in the corner. The only person who gave me a genuine smile was Aunt Barbara, my mother's younger sister, and the family rebel who had married an artist and moved to Maine to open a bookstore. She crossed the room and gave me a real hug. "Jessica, you look wonderful. Where is my grandnephew hiding?" "Den with Dad and Uncle Philip. He brought his science project to show everyone." Barbara's eyes lit up. "The sustainable city model. He sent me pictures. It is remarkable." "You two keep in touch?" I asked, surprised. "Of course. We email every week. That boy has an incredible mind." She squeezed my arm. "Do not let your parents dim his light, Jessica. Trust me on this." Before I could respond, my mother called everyone to the dining room. The long mahogany table was set with her best china and crystal place cards, arranged with strategic precision. I noticed with a sinking feeling that Logan had been seated between my father and my cousin's husband Max, who was known for his competitive nature and conservative views. I was placed at the opposite end next to Allison and her neurosurgeon. Logan emerged from the den, his earlier excitement now tempered with caution. He caught my eye across the room and I gave him an encouraging nod. As everyone settled into their assigned seats, the servers my mother had hired began bringing out elaborate appetizers. "Logan," my father said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "your mother tells me you won some science contest at school." Logan perked up. "Yes, Grandpa. I designed a sustainable city model that uses solar power and water recycling. It even has a miniature working hydroelectric system." Hydroelectric. At your age, I was learning useful skills like changing oil and fixing engines, my father said, cutting into his salad with surgical precision. "The model works," Logan continued, his voice slightly less confident. "I could show you after dinner." My father made a non-committal noise. "What does your coach think about you spending so much time on crafts projects? You are still doing soccer, right?" I watched Logan's face fall. "I stopped soccer last season, Grandpa. I joined the science club instead." My father exchanged a look with my mother that contained an entire conversation of disapproval. "Boys need physical outlets, Logan. Your grandfather played football all through college," my mother added from her end of the table. "I still get exercise," Logan defended quietly. "I bike to school and I take swimming lessons." "Swimming is hardly a team sport," my father scoffed. "There is no character building in swimming laps." I wanted to interject to point out that Logan had shown tremendous character in following his own interests, despite pressure to conform, but my cousin Allison jumped in with details about her recent vacation, momentarily shifting the Fouds' spotlight. As the main course arrived, I watched Logan picking at his food, shoulders slightly hunched. He had positioned himself to take up as little space as possible, a defensive posture I recognized from my own childhood. The conversation flowed around him, touching on politics, real estate values, and the latest country club scandal. Logan remained silent, speaking only when directly addressed, his earlier enthusiasm completely extinguished. Halfway through the main course, my nephew Tyler, just a year older than Logan, began describing his football team's recent victory in loud, animated terms. My father leaned forward, engaged and approving. "Now that is what boys should be doing," he said, clapping Tyler on the shoulder. "Building strength, learning discipline. Right, Logan?" Logan nodded politely. "Tyler is really good at football." "And what are you good at?" My father pressed a challenge in his voice. Before Logan could answer, my mother interjected. "Logan is artistic like his father." She said it like a diagnosis. "I am also really interested in environmental science," Logan added, a last attempt to connect. My teacher says I have a talent for systems thinking. Systems thinking. What happened to good old-fashioned subjects? Uncle Philip laughed. In my day, we learned reading, writing, and arithmetic. And look how well that prepared you for the modern economy, Aunt Barbara muttered, just loud enough to be heard. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table, broken by my mother's too bright voice. Who would like to hear about the renovations we are planning for the summer house? As she launched into a detailed description of imported tiles and custom cabinetry, I caught Logan's eye and mouthed, "You okay?" He gave a small nod, but the light had gone out of his eyes. He was retreating into himself just as I had done countless times at this same table. The tension continued to build throughout the meal, small digs and underhanded comments accumulating like paper cuts. When dessert was served, my mother's famous apple pie, I hoped we had weathered the worst of it. Logan had managed to stay mostly under the radar, and soon we could make our excuses and leave. I should have known better than to relax. In the Mitchell household, the other shoe always dropped eventually. The apple pie was served with vanilla ice cream melting on top, just the way I remembered from childhood. Logan had barely taken a bite when my mother turned her attention back to him. "Logan, darling, sit up straight. You look like you are trying to disappear into your chair." Logan immediately adjusted his posture, a reflexive response to the command in her voice. As he straightened his elbow, bumped his water glass. The crystal tumbler tipped, sending water cascading across the white tablecloth toward my father's plate. "Watch what you are doing, boy," my father barked, pushing his chair back to avoid the spreading puddle. Logan froze, his face flushing crimson. "I am sorry, Grandpa. It was an accident." "Always so clumsy," my mother sighed dramatically, as she signaled the server to clean up the spill, just like his father. "I said I am sorry," Logan repeated, his voice smaller. My father dabbed at his pants with a napkin, scowling. This is what happens when boys do not learn proper coordination through sports. Too much time hunched over books and art projects. "Dad, it was just an accident," I intervened from across the table. "It could happen to anyone." "But it always seems to happen to Logan, does not it?" my mother said, with a tight smile. "Remember Christmas when he knocked over the figurine collection, and Easter when he spilled juice on the new sofa?" I felt heat rising to my face. "That was 3 years ago, Mom. He was 9. "Well, some things never change," my father said, looking pointedly at Logan. "Some people just never learn grace under pressure." Logan stared down at his plate, his shoulders hunching again, despite my mother's earlier correction. The server had cleaned up the spill, but the damage was done. The spotlight was firmly on Logan now, and my parents were warming to their favorite pastime, public criticism disguised as concern. "You know, Logan," my father continued, cutting into his pie, "your cousin Tyler is already being scouted by high school coaches. What are you being scouted for these days?" "I told you, Robert, he is artistic," my mother interjected before Logan could answer. "Like Jessica was before she got practical." "I got an A on my science project," Logan said quietly. "My teacher said it was the most innovative design she had seen in years." "A teacher at a public school," my father scoffed. "Hardly a ringing endorsement." "Logan's school has an excellent reputation," I defended, trying to keep my voice steady. "His science teacher has a doctorate from MIT." "MIT is not what it used to be," Uncle Philip chimed in. "Too focused on political correctness these days instead of real achievement." Logan pushed his pie away, appetite gone. "May I be excused?" he asked. "Finish your dessert," my mother instructed. "Your grandmother spent all day on these pies." Logan obediently picked up his fork again, but his hand was trembling slightly. "So what exactly was this science project?" my cousin's husband Max asked, his tone suggesting he was humoring a child. Logan brightened slightly at someone showing interest. "It is a model of a sustainable city. I researched how urban planning can reduce carbon footprints and increase quality of life. The buildings have miniature solar panels that actually generate electricity, and there is a working water system that demonstrates recycling." "Sounds expensive," my father commented. "Who paid for all these materials?" I saved my allowance for 2 months, Logan said, and Mom helped with some of the technical components. Of course she did, my mother said, with a meaningful look at my father. Jessica has always been too indulgent. I would hardly call supporting my son's education indulgent, I shot back. Education is mathematics and literature, not craft projects my father dismissed. When I was his age, I was learning Latin and calculus, not playing with toy cities. It is not a toy, Logan protested, a rare note of defiance in his voice. It is a functional model that demonstrates scientific principles. The boy should be building actual character, not model cities, my father said to the table at large, as if Logan was not sitting right beside him. At his age, I was working summers at my father's firm, learning the value of hard work. Times have changed, Aunt Barbara interjected. The skills Logan is developing are exactly what the modern world values. The modern world is going to hell in a handbasket, precisely because boys are not being raised to be men anymore, my father declared, warming to one of his favorite topics. I watched Logan shrink further into himself with each word. His earlier flash of defiance had been extinguished by the weight of my father's disapproval. The conversation was spiraling in a familiar, terrible direction, and I felt powerless to stop it. Remember when Logan wanted to take ballet instead of karate, my mother asked the table with a little laugh. Jessica actually signed him up for lessons. He was 8, and his friend Emily was taking classes, I defended. He wanted to try it. Boys do not take ballet, my father declared. I put a stop to that nonsense immediately. You certainly did, I muttered, remembering how my father had shown up at the dance studio and created a scene humiliating Logan in front of his class. And look at him now, my father gestured toward Logan, 12 years old and afraid of his own shadow. No sports, no competition, no drive, just like his father. Logan's face had gone from red to white, his freckles standing out starkly against his pale skin. His hand clutched his fork so tightly his knuckles were white. He is just not like other boys his age, my mother said, with a theatrical sigh. We worry, do not we, Robert? Every day, my father confirmed, taking a sip of his bourbon. The world is not kind to soft men, Logan. Your grandfather is trying to prepare you for reality. My cousin's son Tyler, the football star, was watching this exchange with uncomfortable fascination. Logan helped me with my math homework last time we visited, he offered unexpectedly. He is really smart. Book smarts only get you so far, my father dismissed. Without social skills and physical presence, intelligence is wasted. Logan has plenty of friends, I interjected, feeling my control slipping, and his teachers adore him. Teachers always love the quiet, compliant ones, my father said. It is no indicator of future success. The conversation continued to circle around Logan's perceived deficiencies, each round becoming more pointed, more personal. My mother brought up his brief attempt at playing trumpet, a complete disaster, while my father criticized his handwriting, practically illegible, just like an absent-minded professor. With each comment, Logan seemed to physically diminish, as if trying to disappear entirely. I made several attempts to change the subject, or defend Logan, but was either talked over or dismissed. Other family members watched with varying degrees of discomfort, occasional nervous laughter, punctuating particularly harsh comments. No one except Aunt Barbara and I tried to redirect the conversation or stand up for Logan. By the time coffee was served, Logan was barely responsive, answering questions with single words or nods. The vibrant, intelligent boy who had excitedly packed up his science project just hours before had been systematically dismantled piece by piece by the people who should have been his biggest supporters. And I had let it happen, just as I had let it happen to me for decades. The realization hit me like a physical blow, stealing my breath and sending a wave of nausea through my stomach. I had brought my son into this lion's den, knowing exactly what would happen, and had been too cowardly to stop it. As my father launched into a story about how he had toughened up my brother through what amounted to emotional torture disguised as character building, I saw something change in Logan's eyes. The hurt was still there, but something else was emerging. Something I recognized but had never been brave enough to act on myself. Determination. My father was in his element, now holding court at the head of the table, bourbon in hand, as he pontificated about the problem with kids these days. Logan had become his primary example, a convenient target sitting right beside him. "Take Logan here," he said, gesturing with his glass. "Bright enough, certainly, but no grit, no fire in the belly. You know what he will be in 20 years. One of those men living in his mother's basement, drawing pictures, and complaining about how the world does not understand his genius." Uncomfortable laughter rippled around the table. My mother smiled indulgently at my father. "Robert, you are terrible," she said without a hint of actual disapproval. "I am truthful," my father corrected. "Someone needs to be. The boy needs to hear it, if he is going to amount to anything." I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the hardwood floor. "That is enough, Dad." My father raised his eyebrows, surprised by my interruption. "Sit down, Jessica. We are having a family discussion." "No, you are humiliating my son, and I will not allow it to continue." My mother's smile tightened. "Do not be so dramatic, Jessica. Your father is just concerned about Logan's development. We all are." "He is just a kid," my cousin Allison added awkwardly. "He will get over it." "That is right," my mother nodded. "Children are resilient. A little constructive criticism never hurt anyone." "This is not constructive," I insisted. "This is cruel." "Life is cruel, Jessica," my father said dismissively. "Better he learns it in the safety of family than out in the world." "There is nothing safe about this family," I shot back. A tense silence fell over the table. I remained standing, hands flat on the tablecloth, heart pounding in my chest. My father's expression darkened, and I recognized the look that had always preceded my worst childhood punishments. "You are out of line," he said quietly, dangerously. "Apologize to your mother and me, and we will forget this outburst." 20 years of conditioning nearly had me backing down, apologizing, retreating into the familiar pattern of compliance. But then I looked at Logan, saw the devastation on his face, and found my resolve. "No," I said firmly. "I will not apologize for defending my son." My father's face reddened. "This is exactly why Logan is the way he is. You coddle him, protect him from every hard truth, shield him from consequences. You are raising a victim, Jessica. Better a kind, compassionate victim than a successful bully," I retorted. Gasps erupted around the table. No one talked to Robert Mitchell that way, especially not in his own home. "You see what I mean?" my father said to the table at large, gesturing toward me. "This is the problem with modern parenting. No backbone, no standards." "Speaking of no standards," my mother interjected, turning to Logan with a brittle smile. "Did Jessica ever tell you about her little ballet recital disaster? She was about your age, maybe a bit younger." My stomach dropped. "Mom do not." "Oh, it is a family classic," my mother continued, as if I had not spoken. "Jessica was supposed to be a swan or something equally ridiculous. She had this white tutu, very elaborate. Well, right in the middle of her solo she froze, completely forgot the routine, just stood there while the music played, looking like a startled deer. Then, if you can believe it, she wet herself. Right there on stage." Laughter erupted around the table, nervous and uncomfortable, but laughter nonetheless. My face burned with humiliation, the decades-old shame, as fresh as if it had happened yesterday. "Mom got so upset she had to be medicated," my father added, chuckling. "Refused to leave the house for a week. We had to drag her to school, kicking and screaming." "I was 11 years old," I said through clenched teeth. "And I had a panic attack because you told me right before I went on stage that you would be utterly disappointed if I made a single mistake." "And look how that turned out," my father laughed. "Like mother, like son, I suppose. Both of you crumbling under the slightest pressure." Logan, who had been silent throughout this exchange, suddenly pushed back his chair and stood up. His hands were trembling, but his voice was steady when he spoke. "Stop talking about my mom that way," The laughter died instantly. All eyes turned to Logan standing small but straight beside the towering figure of my father. "Excuse me?" my father said, more surprised than angry. I said, "Stop talking about my mom that way." Logan repeated, his voice stronger. "She is the bravest, kindest person I know. And she was a little kid in that story. You were supposed to protect her, not humiliate her." My father's surprise gave way to anger. "Sit down, Logan. Children do not speak to adults that way in this house." "Maybe they should," Logan replied, still standing. "Maybe if someone had stood up to you sooner, you would not be so mean now." "Logan," my mother gasped. "Apologize to your grandfather immediately." Logan turned to look at her, then back at my father. For a moment, I thought he might back down. Then he straightened his shoulders and spoke with a clarity and conviction that silenced the room. "You have been making fun of me all night. You made fun of my project without even seeing it. You made fun of my interests and my personality, and everything about me. You made my mom feel bad about things that happened when she was a kid. You are not nice people, and I do not have to pretend you are." Complete silence fell over the dining room. My father's face had gone from red to purple, while my mother sat frozen, her coffee cup halfway to her lips. "I will never forget this," Logan continued, his voice quiet but firm. "I will never forget how you made me feel. And I do not think I want to come back here anymore." With that, Logan turned and walked out of the dining room, his steps measured and deliberate. No one spoke as he disappeared down the hallway toward the front door. The silence stretched for what felt like minutes, but was probably only seconds. Finally, my father broke it with a scoff. "Well, I never. The disrespect of that boy. Jessica, you need to get him under control before it is too late." I looked at my father, really looked at him, perhaps for the first time. I saw not the intimidating giant of my childhood, but an aging man desperately clinging to outdated ideas and fading relevance. In that moment, something shifted inside me, a lifetime of fear and deference, giving way to clarity and resolve. "Logan is already under control," I said calmly. "His own control. And he just displayed more courage and integrity than I have seen at this table in 34 years. I stood up and placed my napkin beside my plate. "If you will excuse me, I need to check on my son." Without waiting for a response, I followed Logan's path out of the dining room, feeling lighter with each step away from that table. I found Logan sitting on the front steps of my parents' house, his arms wrapped around his knees. He was staring out at the perfectly manicured lawn, his face composed, but tears silently tracking down his cheeks. I sat down beside him close enough that our shoulders touched. "Hey," I said softly. "Hey," he replied quickly, wiping his face with his sleeve. "You okay?" Logan shrugged. "Not really." "Yeah, me neither." I put my arm around his shoulders. "I am so sorry, Logan. I should have stopped that a long time ago. I should never have let them talk to you that way." "It is not your fault," Logan said. "They are mean to you too." His observation, so simple and true, hit me hard. Yes, they are. They always have been. But that does not excuse me for not protecting you better. "I just do not understand why they hate me so much," Logan said, his voice breaking slightly. "What did I do wrong?" My heart shattered at his words. "Nothing. You did absolutely nothing wrong. This is about them, not you. They are unhappy people who make themselves feel better by putting others down. Even their own family." "Especially their own family," I confirmed. "Because we are supposed to just take it. That is what I did for years. I just took it because I thought that is what family meant." Logan leaned against me. "Is that really what family is supposed to be like?" "No," I said firmly. "Family is supposed to be the people who love you exactly as you are, who build you up, not tear you down, who celebrate your achievements and help you through your failures without judgment." "Like you do for me," Logan said. "I try," I admitted. "I do not always get it right, but I promise I will always be on your side, Logan. Always." We sat in silence for a moment, the sounds of muffled conversation drifting from inside the house. "What happens now?" Logan asked. I took a deep breath. "That is up to you. We can leave right now, go home and figure out the rest later. Or I can go back in there and say what needs to be said while you wait in the car. Your choice." Logan thought about it for a long moment. "I think you should say what you need to say. You deserve that chance." I smiled at my surprisingly wise son. "When did you get so grown up?" "Probably around the time Grandpa started telling me I was not grown up enough," Logan said with unexpected humor. I laughed, feeling a sudden release of tension. "Fair point. Okay, here is what we will do. You take the car keys and wait for me. There is a book in the glove compartment if you want something to do. I will not be long." "Promise." "Promise." I handed him the keys and watched as he walked to our car, shoulders already looking lighter. Then I turned and walked back into the house, a strange calm settling over me. When I re-entered the dining room, conversation stopped abruptly. All eyes turned to me, expressions ranging from curiosity to disapproval. "Is the boy all right?" my father asked stiffly. "His name is Logan," I said. "And no, he is not all right. He was just publicly humiliated by his grandparents in front of his entire extended family. How would you be?" "Jessica," my mother warned, "do not make a scene." "A scene," I repeated. "Like the scene you made about my ballet recital, or the scene Dad made about Logan's science project. Those kinds of scenes." "You are being ridiculous," my father said. "We were having a normal family dinner." "No, Dad. Normal families do not tear each other apart for sport. Normal grandparents do not reduce their grandchildren to tears and then blame them for being too sensitive." "We are trying to prepare him for the real world," my father insisted. "It is not all participation trophies out there." "The real world," I echoed. "You know what the real world has taught me? That what you two did to me, what you are trying to do to Logan, has a name. It is called emotional abuse." Gasps erupted around the table. My mother's hand flew to her pearl necklace. "How dare you?" she hissed. "After everything we have done for you." "What exactly have you done for me, Mom?" Made me feel inadequate at every turn. Criticized my choices, my parenting, my divorce. Turned every achievement into a failure because it was not done your way. "We gave you everything," my father thundered. "The best schools, the best opportunities. We pushed you to excel." "You pushed me to break," I corrected. "Do you know I had panic attacks for years? That I still go to therapy to deal with the perfectionism and anxiety you instilled in me? That I have to actively work not to pass those same toxic patterns on to Logan?" My father dismissed this with a wave of his hand. "More millennial nonsense. In my day we did not need therapy. We needed backbone." "In your day people suffered in silence," I countered. "And that is exactly what I will not do anymore, and what I will not let you do to my son." I looked around the table at my extended family, most of whom were studying their plates or coffee cups with intense interest. Only Aunt Barbara met my gaze, directly giving me a small nod of encouragement. "From now on, things will be different," I continued. "If you want to have a relationship with Logan and me, there will be rules. Basic respect. No public humiliation. No criticism disguised as concern. No comparing him to others, or to some arbitrary standard of what you think a boy should be. You do not get to set rules in our house," my father said, his voice dangerously quiet. "Then we will not be in your house," I replied simply. "Your choice." "You are being completely unreasonable," my mother interjected. "This is a family. Families have disagreements." "This was not a disagreement, Mom. This was a deliberate, sustained attack on a 12-year-old boy's self-esteem. And it stops now." "Or what my father challenged." "Or you lose us," I said. "Both of us. For good." The threat hung in the air, heavy and real. For the first time I saw uncertainty flicker across my father's face. "You would not cut us off from our only grandchild," my mother said, but her voice lacked conviction. "I will do whatever it takes to protect my son," I said. even if that means protecting him from you." My father's expression hardened again. "This is that ex-husband of yours talking. He always was a bad influence." "No, Dad. This is me talking. The me who finally sees clearly what took me 34 years to understand. You cannot bully people into being who you want them to be. Not me. And certainly not Logan." I turned to the rest of the family. "I am sorry to disrupt Allison's birthday dinner. That was not my intention." "It is okay," Allison said quietly. "Some things are more important than birthday dinners." I nodded gratefully to her, then turned back to my parents. "Logan and I are leaving now. When you are ready to apologize to him sincerely and commit to treating him with respect, you can call me. Until then, we will be taking a break from these family gatherings." "Jessica, be reasonable," my mother pleaded. "What will people think?" "I do not care what people think anymore, Mom. I only care what Logan thinks what I think. And right now we both think this environment is toxic." With that, I turned and walked out of the dining room for the second time that evening. This time, however, I did not feel just light. I felt free. As I collected Logan's science project from where it had been abandoned in the foyer, Aunt Barbara appeared beside me. "I am proud of you," she said simply. "It took me until I was 40 to stand up to them. You are ahead of schedule." I smiled at her. "Thanks for always being the voice of reason in this family." "Someone has to be," she said wryly. "Give Logan a hug from me, and tell him his great aunt thinks he is perfect exactly as he is." "I will," I promised. As I walked to the car project box in hand, I saw Logan watching me through the window. His expression was a mixture of concern and hope. "How did it go?" he asked as I got in. "It went exactly as it needed to," I said, starting the engine. "Let us go home." As we drove away from my parents' house, Logan turned to me. "Mom, are we ever going back there?" I considered the question carefully. That depends on Grandma and Grandpa. If they can learn to be kind and respectful, maybe. If not, then no. Logan nodded, digesting this. "I think I am okay with that." "Me too," I said, reaching over to squeeze his hand. "Me too." That night after we arrived home, Logan and I sat at our kitchen table with mugs of hot chocolate. The science project sat on the counter, still wrapped in its protective bubble wrap, never shown to my father. It seemed like a fitting metaphor for how Logan's gifts and talents had been similarly wrapped away, hidden from view at family gatherings. "How are you feeling?" I asked him. Logan stirred his hot chocolate thoughtfully. "Weird. Like sad but also not sad. Does that make sense?" "Perfect sense," I assured him. "It is okay to feel complicated things about family." "Are you mad at me for what I said to Grandpa?" I reached across the table and took his hand. "Logan, I have never been prouder of you than I was tonight. You stood up for yourself with dignity and courage. You spoke your truth without being cruel. That takes incredible strength." "Really?" he asked, a small smile breaking through. "I was worried you would be embarrassed." "The only thing I am embarrassed about is that it took me so long to do the same," I admitted. "You are braver than I ever was at your age. Braver than I am now, probably." "That is not true," Logan protested. "You stood up to Grandpa too." "Only after you showed me how," I said, with a smile. "We make a pretty good team, huh?" "The best," Logan agreed, some of his usual spark returning. We were interrupted by the ringing of my phone. Aunt Barbara's name flashed on the screen. "Hey," I answered. "Everything okay?" "Depends on your definition of okay," she replied dryly. "The dinner party broke up pretty quickly after you left. Your mother had one of her migraines and retreated to her room. Your father is in his study, with a bottle of bourbon, refusing to speak to anyone." "I am sorry about Allison's party," I said sincerely. "Do not be. Allison says it was the most memorable birthday she has ever had. Her exact words were, 'Finally, someone stood up to Uncle Robert.'" I laughed despite myself. "Well, I am glad we provided the entertainment." "It was more than entertainment, Jessica. It was long overdue. Listen, I am calling to see if you and Logan are all right, and to tell you that several family members reached out to me after you left, all saying the same thing: they support you." "Really?" I asked, surprised. "Really? Your cousin Mike said he has been uncomfortable with how your father treats Logan for years but never knew how to say anything. Even Allison's neurosurgeon boyfriend commented on the inappropriate behavior. The validation was unexpected and touching. Thanks for telling me that." "Of course. And Jessica, whatever happens next, I am on your side. So is Uncle George, surprisingly. He called your father a damned bully who finally got what was coming to him." After we hung up, I relayed the conversation to Logan, who seemed relieved to hear that not everyone in the family thought we were in the wrong. We stayed up late talking about boundaries, respect, and what family should mean. It was one of the most honest conversations we had ever had. "Maybe we should write down how we feel," Logan suggested, "so we do not forget or get confused if they try to make us feel bad again." "That is an excellent idea," I agreed. "Like a letter?" Logan nodded. "A letter that explains exactly why what they did was wrong and what needs to change." "Do you want to write it tonight?" I asked. Logan shook his head. "Tomorrow. I want to think about what to say." "Very mature," I said. "Grandpa could learn a thing or two from you about thinking before speaking." Logan actually laughed at that, a sound I had been worried I might not hear for a while after the evening's events. Throughout the night, my phone buzzed with text messages and calls from family members. My mother texted 3 times, each message more dramatically wounded than the last, culminating in, "I cannot believe my own daughter would humiliate me this way." My father did not contact me directly, but my brother called to tell me Dad was on the warpath and I should just apologize and move on like always. I declined his advice. The next morning, Logan woke up with renewed determination. He sat at the kitchen table with a notebook, while I made pancakes, carefully writing and rewriting what he wanted to say. By the time breakfast was over, he had a draft he was satisfied with. "Do you want to read it to me?" I asked. Logan nodded and cleared his throat. "Dear Grandma and Grandpa, last night you hurt my feelings very badly. You made fun of me, my interests, and my personality in front of everyone. You also said mean things about my mom and dad. This is not the first time you have done this, but I want it to be the last. I am proud of who I am. I like science and art. I like reading and swimming. I am good at math and building things. These are not things to be ashamed of or to make fun of. They are part of what makes me me. I do not think you understand how it feels when you criticize everything about me. It makes me feel like I am not good enough and never will be. That is a terrible feeling, especially coming from grandparents who are supposed to love me. Mom says that sometimes people are mean because they do not know better or because they were treated that way themselves. If that is why you act like this, I am sorry that happened to you, but it does not make it okay to do the same thing to me. I do not want to come to your house anymore if things stay the same. I do not want to feel bad about myself every time I see you. If you can learn to be kind and respectful, maybe we can have a relationship again someday, but that is your choice to make. Sincerely, Logan. By the time he finished reading, I had tears in my eyes. That is perfect, Logan. Absolutely perfect. Do you think they will listen? He asked. I do not know, I answered honestly. But either way, you have said what needed to be said, and I am incredibly proud of you for that. After Logan had carefully copied his letter onto nice stationery and sealed it in an envelope, we discussed next steps. I can mail it, I suggested. Logan shook his head. I want to deliver it in person, not to talk to them, just to give them the letter, so they know I mean it. His courage continued to astound me. Are you sure? Yes, he said firmly. Will you drive me there? Of course. The drive to my parents' house was quieter than the previous day's journey. Logan sat in the passenger seat, letter in hand, expression solemn but resolved. When we pulled into their driveway, he took a deep breath. Want me to come with you? I offered. Number. I need to do this myself. I watched as he walked up to the front door, rang the bell and waited. My mother answered, her expression shifting from hope to wariness when she saw Logan standing alone. Even from the car I could see the interaction was brief. Logan handed her the envelope, said something short and turned away before she could respond. He walked back to the car with measured steps, not rushing but not lingering either. "I gave it to Grandma," he reported as he got back in. "I told her it was important, and they should read it together." "How did she react?" "She tried to get me to come inside. I said no thank you, we had to go." I smiled at his polite firmness. "Well done." As we drove away, I caught a glimpse of my mother in the rearview mirror, standing in the doorway watching us leave, envelope in hand. For a moment I felt a pang of the old guilt, the conditioned response to my mother's disappointment. But it passed quickly, replaced by certainty that we were doing the right thing. The fallout was immediate and dramatic. Within an hour of our visit, my phone began ringing non-stop. First my mother, then my father, then my brother, then my mother again. I let each call go to voicemail, telling Logan that we would deal with their responses when we were ready, not on their timeline. My mother's voicemail was tearful. "Jessica, please call me back. This letter from Logan is completely inappropriate. We need to discuss this as a family." My father's was predictably angry. "This has gone far enough, Jessica. Call me immediately. This behavior from Logan is unacceptable, and you are encouraging it." My brother's was uncomfortable. "Hey Jess, Mom and Dad are really upset about some letter. Maybe just call them and smooth things over. You know how they get." I played the messages on speaker, so Logan could hear them. "They are not really listening, are they?" he observed. "No," I agreed. "They are not. At least not yet." By evening the tone of the messages had changed. My mother sounded less indignant, more concerned. "Jessica, please. Your father is beside himself. We need to talk about this." My father surprisingly did not leave another message. Aunt Barbara called to report that the letter had indeed caused a stir. "Your mother called me in tears, asking what she should do. I told her she should take a good hard look at her behavior and figure it out herself." Not my most compassionate moment, but necessary. "How did she take that?" I asked. "Not well initially, but later she called back and asked in a much smaller voice if I thought you were serious about cutting them off. I told her that if I were you, I absolutely would be." The next few days brought a steady stream of family gossip through Aunt Barbara. Apparently my parents had been forced to cancel their weekly dinner party because my mother was too upset to host. My father had backed out of his golf game, claiming a sudden back pain that no one believed. The family grapevine was buzzing with speculation and increasingly support for Logan and me. "Your cousin Allison told your mother point blank that Logan was right to stand up for himself," Aunt Barbara reported gleefully. "Said she wished she had done the same at his age." A week after the dinner, my mother left a different kind of message. "Jessica the First. We have been thinking about what Logan wrote. And what you said. Perhaps we could meet somewhere neutral to talk. Please call me back." I discussed it with Logan before responding. "What do you think? Should we meet with them?" He considered the question seriously. "Not yet. I do not think they really understand what they did wrong. They just want things to go back to normal." "I agree," I said, impressed by his insight. "I will tell them we need more time." My text to my mother was simple and clear. "Logan and I are not ready to meet yet. We need to see acknowledgement of the specific behaviors that were hurtful, not just a general desire to talk things out. When you and Dad are ready for that conversation, let me know." My mother's response came quickly. "We acknowledge we may have been too harsh with Logan, but family criticism comes from a place of love. Surely you understand that." I showed Logan the message. He shook his head. "They still do not get it." "No," I agreed. "They do not." Another week passed with similar half-acknowledgements and attempts to minimize what had happened. My father finally broke his silence with an email that began promisingly with, "I have been reflecting on my behavior," but quickly devolved into justifications and references to oversensitivity in today's youth. During this time, Logan seemed to be processing the experience in his own way. He was quieter than usual but not withdrawn. He worked on school projects, spent time with friends, and even began a new art piece that featured a small figure standing up to a much larger shadow. "It is about finding your voice," he explained when I asked about it, "even when the other person seems really big and scary." 1 month after the fateful dinner, we received word through Aunt Barbara that my parents had been uncharacteristically absent from several social events. Their usual commanding presence at the country club had been replaced by quiet, almost subdued appearances. "Your father actually declined to give the keynote at the annual golf banquet," Barbara reported. "Said he was not feeling up to it." Eleanor told Judith Wilson that they are going through a difficult family situation, first time I have ever heard her admit to any family imperfection. 2 days later, a large envelope arrived, addressed to both Logan and me. Inside was a handwritten letter from my father, something so unprecedented I had to sit down to read it. "Dear Jessica and Logan, I have written and rewritten this letter many times over the past month. Words do not come easily to me, especially words of apology. But it has become clear that nothing less will suffice. Logan, your letter forced me to confront aspects of my behavior that I have long justified as building character or preparing you for the real world. I now recognize that what I called guidance was actually criticism, and what I called motivation was actually control. The night of Allison's birthday dinner, I behaved inexcusably. I belittled your achievements, dismissed your interests, and humiliated you in front of the family. There is no justification for this behavior. It was wrong, plain and simple. Jessica, you were right to stand up for your son, just as he stood up for himself and for you. The courage you both showed that night has forced me to examine patterns in my own behavior that go back decades. I treated you the same way my father treated me, never questioning whether it was right or effective. I am not asking for immediate forgiveness or a return to the way things were. I understand now that the way things were was harmful. Instead, I am asking for an opportunity to learn how to be the father and grandfather you both deserve. If you are willing, I would like to meet on your terms at a place of your choosing to begin the process of repairing what I have broken. With sincere regret and hope, Robert Mitchell. I handed the letter to Logan, watching his face as he read it. "Do you think he means it?" Logan asked when he finished. "I think he might," I said cautiously. "This is not like him at all. Your great-aunt Barbara says they have been acting very differently these past few weeks." "So their world really did crumble," Logan observed, referencing the line from his own letter. "In a way, yes," I agreed. "Their world of always being right, always being in control, always setting the rules. That world is gone now because you were brave enough to challenge it." Logan thought about this for a moment. "I think we should meet with them. Not at their house, though." "Agreed. Where would you feel comfortable?" "The park by the library," Logan suggested. "It is public, but we can still talk privately." I nodded. "The park it is." I sent a text to my father, something I rarely did, as our communications had always gone through my mother. "Logan and I have read your letter. We are willing to meet at Jefferson Park this Saturday at 11 a.m. Just the four of us." His response came back almost immediately. "We will be there. Thank you for this chance." As I put my phone down, I realized that for the first time in my adult life, I was setting the terms of my relationship with my parents, and it had taken my 12-year-old son to show me how. 6 months after that fateful dinner party, Logan and I found ourselves in a new normal. The immediate aftermath had been challenging with raw emotions and difficult conversations, but gradually, something unexpected emerged from the wreckage of our family dynamics: authenticity. Our first meeting with my parents at Jefferson Park had been awkward, but productive. My father, normally imposing in his tailored suits and commanding presence, seemed smaller somehow, in casual clothes sitting on a park bench. My mother, who never had a hair out of place, looked tired and uncertain. Logan, on the other hand, spoke with quiet confidence about how their behavior had affected him. He used I statements, the way his school counselor had taught him. I feel hurt when you criticize my interests. I feel anxious before family gatherings, because I am afraid of being made fun of. My parents listened without interrupting a first in family history. When it was their turn to speak, my father struggled visibly with humility, but managed to admit specific behaviors that had been harmful. My mother cried something I had seen only twice in my life. We do not know how to be different, she confessed. This is how we were raised, how we have always been. That is not an excuse, I pointed out. But it is a starting point for change if you are willing to do the work. They agreed to family therapy, another unprecedented concession. The therapist, a kind but firm woman named Dr. Reed, did not allow them to slip back into old patterns of deflection and blame. In one memorable session, she had my father repeat back Logan's feelings without adding any qualifiers or buts. It took him 4 attempts to get through it without commentary. Outside of therapy, we established new traditions. Instead of formal dinners at my parents' house, we met at neutral locations for specific activities. Logan suggested an art museum visit where he guided my father through an exhibition on architectural design, connecting it to his own interest in sustainable cities. My father, an avid golfer, invited Logan to the driving range, promising no criticism, just instruction if requested. These outings were not perfect. Old habits occasionally surfaced, with my father making an offhand remark about Logan's grip on the golf club being like a girl's, or my mother suggesting Logan's hair could use a proper styling. But the difference was that they now caught themselves sometimes mid-sentence and corrected course. And when they did not, Logan and I felt empowered to point it out directly. That comment about my hair felt like criticism, Grandma, Logan would say calmly. Or I would interject, Dad, we talked about gender stereotypes being harmful. Most surprisingly, they listened. Aunt Barbara became our strongest ally in maintaining boundaries. Your mother tried to complain to me about how oversensitive everyone is these days, she reported during one of our weekly phone calls. I shut that down immediately. Told her if she thinks respecting others is being oversensitive, she needs more therapy, not less. The extended family dynamic shifted as well. Cousins who had previously enabled my parents' behavior by laughing along or staying silent now spoke up when inappropriate comments were made. Uncle Philip, after witnessing one of Logan's calm but firm boundary statements, actually apologized for his own past behavior. Never thought I would see the day when Philip admitted he was wrong about anything, Aunt Barbara marveled. Logan is creating quite the ripple effect. Logan himself flourished in the new environment of respect and boundaries. His science project advanced to the state-level competition. He joined a local art class and began selling his work at community fairs. He developed a close friendship with his cousin Tyler, who admitted he had always felt pressured to be the sports guy when he actually preferred computer programming. One evening, as Logan and I were walking home from a movie, he asked me a question that showed just how much he had been processing. Mom, do you think Grandpa and Grandma are happier now that they are not trying to control everyone all the time? I considered this thoughtfully. I think they are adjusting to a new way of being. It is probably both harder and more freeing than they expected. Like learning a new language, Logan suggested. Exactly like that, I agreed. They spoke criticism and control for so long they are having to learn the language of respect and acceptance as adults. It is harder than learning it as a child. But they are trying, Logan acknowledged. They are, I confirmed. And that matters. The real test came 6 months after the original confrontation, when my mother suggested hosting a small family dinner at their house. Logan and I discussed it thoroughly before accepting. We can always leave if it becomes uncomfortable, I reminded him. I know, he said confidently, but I think it will be okay. The dinner was noticeably different from previous gatherings. My mother had asked Logan in advance what foods he enjoyed, rather than serving only my father's preferences. The conversation was lighter, with my father making a visible effort to ask questions about Logan's interests without judgment. There was one moment when my father began to lecture about the importance of STEM subjects over art, but he caught himself mid-sentence. "I am stating my opinion too strongly," he said, looking directly at Logan. "I apologize. I would like to hear more about your perspective on how art and science can work together." Logan's face registered surprise, then cautious pleasure as he described a project his class was doing on scientific illustration. My father listened attentively, asking genuine questions. Later, as we were leaving, my mother hugged me tightly. "Thank you for not giving up on us," she whispered. "We are still finding our way," I reminded her. "I know," she acknowledged, "but at least now we are all on the path together." In the car on the way home, Logan was thoughtful. "It is weird seeing Grandpa try so hard to be different." "Good weird or bad weird?" I asked. "Good. Weird, I think. Like when he asked about my art project and actually listened. He still looked like he wanted to say something critical, but he did not." "That is progress," I said. "Real change happens in those moments of choice when the old way is easy, but you choose the harder, better way instead." Logan nodded. "Do you think they will ever fully change?" "I do not know," I answered honestly. People can change their behavior more easily than they change their core beliefs. But behavior matters. How they treat you matters. And right now they are choosing to treat you with more respect. Because they had to, Logan pointed out. Because we made them. True, I acknowledged. But choosing to change even when the motivation comes from outside still requires internal work. They could have refused. Many people would have. As we pulled into our driveway, Logan asked one final question. "Are you glad we stood up to them?" I turned to face my remarkable son, this boy, who had taught me more about courage than anyone in my life. It was the best thing we ever did. Not just for us, but for them too. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is to hold them accountable. Even if it hurts at first. Especially then, I confirmed. Real growth usually involves some pain. The journey of healing our family relationships continues every day. There are still missteps and old patterns that resurface, but now there is also awareness, accountability, and genuine effort to do better. What happened that night at the dinner table changed all of us. It taught Logan that his voice matters. It taught my parents that respect cannot be demanded, only earned. And it taught me that protecting my child sometimes means facing my own deepest fears and breaking cycles that have existed for generations. If you have ever had to stand up to family members who hurt you or someone you love, I hope our story gives you courage. Setting boundaries is not selfish or disrespectful. It is an act of love both for yourself and for the person being held accountable. Sometimes a family's world needs to crumble before something healthier can be built in its place. Have you ever had to stand up to family members who crossed the line? How did you handle it? Drop a comment below to share your experience. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more real-life stories about family dynamics and personal growth. And remember to share this video with someone who might need to hear that it is okay to speak up and set boundaries, even with the people who raised you. Thank you for listening to my story, and I wish you courage on your own journey of creating healthy relationships with the people in your life.